Hello folks, and welcome to another episode of Khans of Tarkir Spoiler Reviews. We got a lot of cards to go through today, as Wizards is finally kind enough to take a small break on the reveal so I can finally catch up. Anyway, time for some more reviews. Up first we have War Name Aspirin. I mean Aspirin. This chick has huevos, my compadres. She cures your headaches and causes a massive one for your opponents. See what I did there with the aspirin thing? Yeah. Anyway, at face value she is a 2-1 for 1 colorless and 1 red. Not too shabby. She also has Raid, so when you attack with a creature in the same turn she comes out, she comes into play with a +1/+1 counter on her, making her effectively a 3-2 for 2. And that's pretty impressive, folks. Not to mention that this 1/1 counter has instant synergy with all these new cards, which help out counters and stuff. So it's easy for this card to get additional value out of her already awesome upside. But that's not all. She can also not be blocked by creatures with power 1 or less. So you thought you were safe behind that 0/6? Nah-ah. She doesn't care how big the booty is. She goes right on through, folks, making this card an absolute threat for only 2 mana. I feel she is gonna see some play in raid-oriented aggro decks, and in limited, she is just a monster. So I'll be giving this war named Aspirin a 2.8 for standard and let's say 3 for draft. Although I admittedly am biased as I am an aggressive player myself. Next up is Mind Swipe. This is a X, 1 blue and 1 red instant, which counters target spell unless opponent plays X, and additionally this card deals X damage to the spell's controller. So we've seen this effect a bunch of times before. It's Syncopate. However, this card, for 1 additional mana, attaches a pseudo fireball to it. So the value of this card really depends on the player casting it. Is it worth an extra mana to counter a spell and deal 3 or 2 damage to your opponent? In my opinion, it really isn't worth it. I would rather play a Syncopate, because if I was a control player, the damage literally wouldn't be a big deal for me. The primary effect is the countering, not the damage. However, I like that this card exists to spice up the counter spells a little bit, instead of giving them the typical draw a card, scry a card, blah blah blah, boring control stuff. This card at least interacts with players, and that's something. I give this card a 2 for standard because, like I said, control players care more about cost effectiveness rather than damage, so they'll likely choose a cheaper, more consistent counterspell. And for draft, I don't like counterspells at all, and I usually avoid them, but the damage this card can give you can actually win games, so it's a little more flexible than counterspells have been in the past. So I'll give this a 1.6 out of 5 for draft, just because of the counterspell thing. Suspension Field is one sexy card, my friends. Think Oblivion Ring, but cheaper. And by that I mean it's basically Oblivion Ring, but cheaper. This 1 colorless, 1 white enchantment gets rid of most creatures, yeah, and it gets rid of them pretty good. For only 2 mana, you can exile a target creature with toughness 3 or greater, until the Suspension Field leaves play at least. This card reminds me a lot of Detention Sphere in its design and art, and all that. But that's just a side note. In reality, this card is actually a lot worse than Oblivion Ring. It is only target creatures, and that's a thing, and they have to meet an additional qualification. So you can't just get rid of the weak guys like the mana dorks or something that you really want to get rid of all the time. However, this card is still amazing removal, as it exiles, skips the graveyard shenanigans, and death effects, and just cuts them out completely. It's a 2 mana removal, and for that, it's premium choice for limited, and I feel it's a little worse than other removals that are floating around standard at the moment. For standard, I give this card a 1.5, just because there are better options than this, for removal anyway. And for draft, I'll give it a 4.5, because it is removal, and doesn't get a 5 because it's spot removal, which kinda sucks, but it's pretty high, it gets pretty good up there, it's pretty good. Let's get to some nuts creatures, shall we? Mantis Rider is a 3/3 flying, vigilance, and haste for only 1 blue, 1 red, and 1 white mana. The only downside to this creature is that it costs 3 different colors. In a set that revolves around wedges and 3 different color casting costs, I would hardly call that a downside at all. This guy is a 3/3 with evasion, with haste, with vigilance. That's crazy! It shuts down aggressive dorks, puts you on the aggressive, it does it all, it's amazing. And all for the low price of only 3 mana. I love this card, I can't wait to get all the copies. I think this guy is going to be used in any deck that runs these 3 particular colors, And why wouldn't they? He is such value. I have never seen a card with so much stats on such little cost. I will have this guy a 3 for standard because it's not, you know, I'm not a Pro Tour master or anything, and I might just be getting overly excited for this guy. And he does die to Anger the Gods and all the other 3 toughness removal in the format. But I'll give this guy a 4.6 for draft because he is one tough dude. I find it hard to see someone busting this guy on turn 3 and their opponent being able to stop him anywhere near fast enough. His mana cost makes this situation pretty hard to come by, but when it does, it's just gonna end games right there, right then. Icy Blast is a X and 1 blue mana instant spell. Tap X creatures. Pretty standard stuff. Yeah, we all know ice taps guys in Magic, that's just what it does, that's cool and stuff, whatever. However, this card also has Ferocious. So if you have a creature with power 4 or higher, those creatures do not untap until their controller's next unstep. So you get an additional turn of these guys being indisposed. Free reign to attack, set up, or just lame your opponent out for an extra turn, whatever. This card reminds me a lot of Sleep, but Sleep was, well, Sleep was Sleep. I can't say I like this spell more because while it costs less initially, you may have to pay more depending on how many creatures actually are in play and how many you want to tap. For that, this card gains versatility, however it loses potency. And as for the Ferocious effect, while powerful, there is no guarantee that you will always be able to cast it with a creature with power 4 or greater in play. I'm actually kinda surprised that this got a rare slot. Or maybe I'm missing something out on this card. I just don't feel it's as powerful as I'm supposed to think it is. I give this card a 2 for standard because I don't have a clue how useless or helpful this card can possibly be in that format, and I'm going to give this card a 1.9 for draft because while the effect is good, there's no real way to make sure that you will always activate the ferociousness of this card, making it significantly worse. Savage Knuckleblade is up next, folks, and this guy is some major value. A 4/4 for 1 green, 1 blue, and 1 red is already enough to take notice, as we have already seen another 4/4 for 3 in this set as well. The quote-unquote downside of this card is that he requires, again, 3 different sources. But this is not a downside, folks. The set is built for these wedges, so getting them out for this cost is just not an issue. Additionally, he has 3 different effects. The first one being tap 2 and a green, and he gets +2/+2 until the end of turn, and you may only activate this once per turn. The second is you can tap 2 and a blue to return it to its owner's hand, which protects this guy from any kind of removal your opponent can possibly have. Wraths, murders, anything you can think of. You can just put it back in your hand and it whiffs the spells. And finally, for only 1 red, he gains haste. So if you have an extra mana, it becomes a 4/4 instant damage, which is nicely comboed with his second ability, as you can play him from your hand multiple times, and he doesn't have to wait around for a whole turn to be useful. There is a lot going on this card, so let's try and break it down, shall we? He is a 4/4 who can beat 5/5s with his first ability, and he can also match 6/6s. He cannot be removed with spells as long as they have mana open to protect him, and he has haste for 1 red. Whew, this guy is insane. He handles everything. He takes care of business, folks. He never quits. I'm seriously giving this guy a 5 for standard and for draft, just because of the pure versatility this card offers. If you have a mana, and he can do it, folks, and if he doesn't have the mana, he's still a 4/4 for 3. Deal done, my friends, deal done. And next we have another valued card, Hardened Scales. This 1 green enchantment says whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters would be placed on a creature you control, put an additional +1/+1 counter on that creature. Wizards worded this card very specifically so not to confuse people. So basically, all those Outlast guys, yeah, they just got a lot better. Not as if they were bad to begin with or anything. This thing is huge value for its cost, and I'm honestly excited to see it in action in some kind of counter-based synergy deck. This card is great and cheap, so for standard I'll give this guy some love and give him a 2.6 for that format because I desperately want to see some counter decks at wreck at Grand Prix. And I'll give this card a 1.5 for draft because it doesn't really do anything if you don't have cards with counters on them. That's just it. If you do, if you have the Outlast deck, then great for you, this card's some huge value. But if not, it's kind of just like a rock and it sits there and it doesn't do anything. Alright, time for yet another Ascendancy, this time for those handsome snake folk. The Sultai Ascendancy is, to me, one of the more underwhelming in the cycle. This enchantment for 1 black, 1 green, and 1 blue allows you at the beginning of your upkeep to look at the top 2 cards of your library and put any number of those into your graveyard or back on the top of your library in any order. So it's like Scry 2, but with the option to discard the cards into your graveyard if you want. This guy has obvious synergy with the other Sultai, as they seem to be all about the graveyard and stuff. Also, this card could help out those dredge decks, which is a little too cute in my opinion. Anyway, this Ascendancy works well with the clan, but that's about it. It's not inherently good like the other are, except for the haste one anyway. It gives you info on your draws and lets you thin out your deck a little bit. Powerful, yes, but it doesn't really do anything to the board, and for that it loses a little bit of potency for me. I'll give this a 2 for standard because I'm hoping to see some creative Delve Sultai decks, and I like that a lot. I like that kind of play a lot, but it doesn't seem very good. And I'll give it a 1 for draft because you'll need a lot of cards to make this useful in that format, and they can't really all be guaranteed to you. I wouldn't first pick this thing, and I wouldn't really go the Delve route either, but that's just me. Alright, last but definitely not least, it's Empty the Pits. There has been a lot of talk around this 4 black 2x instant spell. Basically, you put X 2/2 zombies into play tapped. In order to get 1 2/2 zombie, you need to tap 6 mana, a pretty outrageous amount to get 1 tap token. However, because this card can be cast with Delve, and fetch lands are coming back to kind of feed your graveyard, this card could actually be the nuts. It all depends on how much you're willing to feed your graveyard. If you want to go the full Sultai deck, this card could actually shut down the game quite quickly. For that, I think this card will see more kitchen table play than anything else, as huge cards like this need a lot of work to break in the standard, and can almost never be played in limited. I'll give this a solid 2 for standard play because I really want to see it be broken, and a 0 for draft because it will never be cast in that format, not ever. And when it does, it will be literally like 1 or 2 tap creatures and that's it. I'd love to see it randomly win in the world's most perfectly drafted Sultai deck, but I'm thinking that's going to be on rare occasions. Also spoiled were more of the tap lands. These cards that tap for 3 colors, they come into play tap. Yeah, they're good. I mean, they're lands, they're not as good as the fetch lands, but they're, you know, they help you with the land and the manins. So they're cards, yeah, that's good. Anyway, to get 5 out of 5, because they're lands, yeah. Alright folks, I'm finally all caught up with the spoilers. Remember, if you liked the video, and what I had to say about the cards, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh yeah, and stay tuned for more Khans of Tarkir spoilers. Ta hear you later!